Sophia Reeves pressed her palm against the reinforced glass of her laboratory window, feeling the artificial coolness that protected them from the scorching heat outside. The sight of Denver's crumbling skyline through the haze of dust storms had become all too familiar in the past decade. At 32, she could barely remember a time when rain fell freely from the sky. The year was 2157, and Earth's water crisis had reached its breaking point. The last natural rainfall had been recorded 3 years ago, and now humanity survived on carefully rationed supplies from the rapidly depleting underground aquifers. As lead researcher at the Global Water Conservation Initiative, Sophia had dedicated her life to finding a solution, but time was running out. She turned back to her workstation, where rows of test tubes contained her latest experiments in atmospheric moisture capture. The technology wasn't new, but her approach was, using bioengineered bacteria to enhance the efficiency of water molecule collection. The results were promising, but still far from what they needed to sustain global population. Dr. Reeves? Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. There's someone here to see you. He says it's urgent. Sophia frowned. She wasn't expecting any visitors, and security protocols had become incredibly strict since water riots had broken out in major cities across the globe. Who is it? He says his name is Thane Wallace. He has level alpha clearance. Her eyebrows shot up. Level alpha clearance was reserved for top government officials and key international figures. She hadn't heard of anyone named Thane Wallace in those circles. Send him in, she said, quickly organizing her scattered notes and smoothing her lab coat. The man who walked through her laboratory door wasn't what she expected. Tall and broad-shouldered, he moved with the quiet confidence of someone used to commanding attention. His dark hair was peppered with gray at the temples, and his eyes, a striking shade of green, seemed to take in everything at once. Dr. Reeves, he said, his voice carrying a slight accent she couldn't place. Thank you for seeing me without notice. I've been following your research with great interest. Sophia studied him carefully. That's surprising, considering most of my research is classified. A slight smile crossed his face. Let's just say I have access to information that most people don't. I'm here because I believe I can help you achieve what you're working toward. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small vial filled with clear liquid. The casual way he handled it made Sophia's scientific instincts tingle with curiosity. In a world where water was more precious than gold, nobody carried it so carelessly. This isn't water, he said, noting her expression. At least, not in any way you've seen before. It's something I've developed over the past 15 years. Something that could change everything. Sophia took the vial, holding it up to the light. The liquid inside seemed to shimmer with an unusual iridescence. What is it? A catalyst. One that could make your atmospheric moisture capture technology 1,000 times more efficient. He stepped closer, his presence commanding but not threatening. But I need your help to perfect it. My expertise lies in different areas, and your research in bacterial engineering is exactly what this project needs. Sophia's mind raced with possibilities. If what he was saying was true, it could be the breakthrough they'd been searching for. But years of working in a world where water meant power had taught her to be cautious. Why me? She asked. And why now? Thane's expression grew serious. Because in 6 months, the last major aquifer supplying the western United States will run dry. That's classified information, but I suspect you've already calculated it yourself. She had. Her own estimates suggested 8 months, but she knew they could be optimistic. What you don't know, he continued, is that when that happens, the government plans to implement the Genesis Protocol. The term was unfamiliar, but something in his tone made her blood run cold. What's the Genesis Protocol? A population control measure. They'll shut down water supply to what they deem non-essential communities. Millions will die, but the essential population centers will survive longer on the remaining water supply. Sophia felt the room spin slightly. The implications were staggering, but deep down, she had always known something like this might be coming. In a world dying of thirst, the powerful would do anything to survive. I have proof, Thane said softly. And I also have resources, labs, equipment, and a team of dedicated scientists working outside government control. But we need your expertise, Dr. Reeves. We need you to help us perfect this catalyst before they implement Genesis. Sophia looked down at the vial in her hand, then back at her own experiments. Years of careful research, all conducted within the rules and regulations of a system that, if Thane was telling the truth, had already decided to sacrifice millions. If I help you, she said slowly, I need to know everything. No more secrets. No hidden agendas. Thane nodded. You have my word. Though I should warn you, once you know everything, there's no going back. The people behind Genesis, they won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who threatens their plans. Sophia thought of her family, her younger sister living in one of the non-essential communities in rural Colorado. She thought of all the families like hers, unaware that they had been marked for sacrifice by the very authorities they trusted to save them. She squared her shoulders and met Thane's intense gaze. When do we start? A genuine smile spread across his face, transforming his serious features. Right now, if you're ready. I have a facility outside the city. We can be there in an hour. Sophia glanced once more at her lab, at the years of work contained within its walls. Then she began gathering her essential research materials. She had started this work to save humanity from the water crisis. She hadn't imagined that she would also need to save it from itself. As they left the laboratory, the setting sun painted the dusty sky in shades of blood red. Somewhere in that dying world was the key to humanity's survival, and Sophia had chosen her side in the race to find it. She just hoped they would have enough time. Thane's facility was nothing like Sophia had imagined. Instead of the makeshift laboratory she'd expected, she found herself in a vast underground complex carved into the Rocky Mountains. The air was cool and humid, a shocking contrast to the arid world above. How is this possible? She asked, watching water droplets condense on the curved ceiling of the main chamber. The energy requirements alone. Geothermal power, Thane explained, leading her through corridors lined with advanced equipment. The complex was built decades ago as a contingency plan for environmental collapse. Most people who know about it think it's abandoned. They passed through a series of security checkpoints, each more sophisticated than the last. Sophia noticed that the guards treated Thane with a mixture of respect and wariness. Whoever he was, his authority here was absolute. The main laboratory took her breath away. It was easily 3 times the size of her government facility, with equipment she'd only read about in theoretical papers. A team of scientists worked at various stations, all focused on their tasks with intense concentration. Welcome to Project Aquarius, Thane said, pride evident in his voice. Every person here has been carefully chosen for their expertise and their commitment to saving humanity, not just the privileged few. A tall woman with silver-streaked black hair approached them. Dr. Reeves, she said warmly. I'm Dr. Naomi Winters. Your work on bacterial engineering in water purification systems is brilliant. Dr. Winters wrote the original papers on molecular reformation in atmospheric moisture, Thane explained. She's been instrumental in developing the catalyst. Sophia's scientific mind was already racing with possibilities. The iridescence in your catalyst, it's not just an effect of the light, is it? The molecules are actually shifting form at a quantum level. Naomi's eyes lit up. Exactly. But we're having trouble maintaining stability in larger quantities. That's where your bacterial engineering could be the key. For the next several hours, they immersed themselves in the technical details. Sophia's excitement grew as she began to understand the true potential of what they were working on. The catalyst didn't just make water collection more efficient, it fundamentally altered the way water molecules behaved. With this, she said, examining data from their latest trials, we could potentially create self-sustaining water cycles in enclosed systems. Every city could have its own manufactured rain cycle. That's the goal, Thane said softly. He had stayed nearby as they worked, his presence both reassuring and slightly distracting. But we're racing against time. The Genesis Protocol isn't the only threat we're facing. Sophia looked up from her work. What do you mean? Thane exchanged glances with Naomi, who nodded grimly. Show her, she said. He led Sophia to a secure computer terminal and pulled up a series of documents. These are internal communications from HydroCorp International. They've known about the potential for atmospheric water generation for years. They've been deliberately suppressing research that could lead to it. Sophia felt her anger rising as she read. HydroCorp was the largest private water corporation in the world, controlling most of the remaining aquifers. They're letting people die to maintain their monopoly on water supply. And they have deep connections within every major government, Thane added. They're the ones really pushing for the Genesis Protocol. Population reduction means their remaining water supplies will last longer, and they can charge even more for it. How did you get this information? A shadow passed over Thane's face. I used to work for them. I was head of their research division until I discovered what they were really planning. When I tried to go public, He paused, his jaw tightening. They made sure I understood the consequences of betrayal. Sophia noticed for the first time a faint scar running along his neck, usually hidden by his collar. They tried to kill you. They succeeded in killing everyone else who knew about my research. I barely escaped with the initial formula for the catalyst. I've spent the last 5 years building this facility, gathering allies, trying to perfect it before it's too late. Their eyes met, and Sophia felt something shift between them, a deeper understanding, a shared purpose that went beyond their professional collaboration. In his green eyes, she saw the same fire that burned in her own soul, the determination to fight against those who would sacrifice humanity for profit. Dr. Reeves, Naomi interrupted gently. I think you should see this. She handed Sophia a tablet displaying real-time data from their atmospheric monitoring stations. The numbers made her heart sink. The moisture levels are dropping faster than predicted, Sophia said, scanning the readings. Even with rationing, most communities won't last 3 months, let alone 6. Which means Genesis will be implemented sooner, Thane concluded grimly. We need to accelerate our timeline. I'll need to modify my bacterial strains to work with the catalyst, Sophia said, already planning the necessary experiments. If we can create a stable symbiosis between the bacteria and the transformed water molecules. How long? Thane asked. Sophia made some quick calculations. 2 weeks to develop the initial strains. Another 2 for testing and refinement. After that. She looked at the massive facility around them. How quickly can you scale up production? We have fabrication plants ready, Naomi said. They've been running dummy productions for months to avoid detection. We can switch to real production as soon as you perfect the formula. Thane's phone buzzed with an urgent message. His expression darkened as he read it. We may have less time than we thought. One of our sources inside HydroCorp just reported unusual activity. They're moving their security forces into position near major water treatment facilities. They're preparing for riots when they cut off the water supply, Sophia realized. We have to move faster. I'll have quarters prepared for you here, Thane said. It's safer than returning to the surface, and we can't afford to lose any time. Sophia thought of her apartment in Denver, her normal life that now seemed like a distant memory. But looking at the data on the tablet, at the evidence of HydroCorp's betrayal, she knew she had no choice. This was where she needed to be. "I'll need to get a message to my sister," she said. "Let her know I'm safe." Thane nodded. "We have secure communications. But be careful what you tell her. The less she knows, the safer she'll be." As the facilities team mobilized around them, beginning the accelerated research schedule, Sophia felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. They weren't just fighting against time and scientific challenges, they were fighting against powerful forces that would stop at nothing to maintain their control over humanity's most precious resource. But looking at Thane's determined face, at Naomi's brilliant mind already at work on the problems ahead, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. Together, they might just have a chance to save not just the privileged few, but everyone. The next 2 weeks in the underground facility passed in a blur of intense work and breakthrough moments. Sophia had never pushed herself so hard, but the results were worth it. Her modified bacterial strains were showing unprecedented success rates in stabilizing the catalyst. "Look at this," she said to Thane one evening, pointing to her microscope display. "The bacteria aren't just surviving in the catalyzed water, they're thriving. They're actually enhancing the molecular transformation process." Thane leaned close to examine the results, his shoulder brushing against hers. These small moments of contact had become more frequent lately, and Sophia found herself increasingly aware of his presence. His scent, a mix of coffee and something uniquely him, had become familiar, comforting. "This is incredible," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "With this level of stability, we could implement the system on a massive scale." But their progress hadn't gone unnoticed. That same night, alarms blared through the facility. Sophia jolted awake in her quarters to find Thane at her door, his face grim. "We've got company," he said. "HydroCorp's security forces are on the mountain. They must have traced our power usage." Sophia quickly pulled on her boots. "The research. Naomi's already implementing the emergency protocols. But we need to move everything to the backup facility." They raced through the corridors, now buzzing with urgent activity. The facility's staff moved with practiced efficiency, suggesting they had drilled for this scenario. Sophia helped Naomi secure their latest samples while Thane coordinated the evacuation. The bacterial cultures need to be kept at exact temperatures, Sophia insisted, carefully packing her most promising strains. "If they destabilize." An explosion rocked the facility, sending tremors through the mountain. Dust rained from the ceiling. "They're trying to blast their way in through the emergency exits," Thane said, checking his tablet. "Security teams are holding them off, but we need to move now." Naomi finished sealing the last container of catalyst. "Everything essential is packed. The rest will be destroyed by the automated systems." They headed for a hidden elevator at the back of the facility, designed to look like part of the natural rock formation. As they waited for it to arrive, another explosion hit closer. The lights flickered. "They're moving faster than we expected," Thane muttered. He pulled out a sleek black handgun, checking its magazine. "Sophia, stay close to me." The elevator arrived, and they piled in with their critical supplies. As the doors closed, Sophia caught a glimpse of armed figures in tactical gear breaching the main laboratory. "Where are we going?" she asked as they descended deeper into the mountain. "There's a tunnel system," Thane explained. "It leads to several backup facilities. We've been preparing for this possibility since the beginning." The elevator opened into a vast cavern with underground rail tracks stretching into darkness. A sleek transport vehicle waited for them, already loaded with equipment and staffed by more of Thane's people. As they boarded, Sophia thought of something. "My sister, if they found this facility, they might go after her." Thane was already nodding. "I sent a team to protect her the day you joined us. She's being moved to a safe location as we speak." The realization that he had thought to protect her family without being asked stirred something warm in Sophia's chest. She reached for his hand in the darkness of the tunnel, and he squeezed back gently. The journey to the backup facility took several hours through a maze of underground passages. Sophia used the time to monitor her bacterial samples, ensuring the delicate cultures survived the move. But her mind kept wandering to the implications of what had happened. "They're desperate," she said to Thane as they checked the samples together. "They wouldn't risk such an open attack unless they knew how close we are to succeeding." "They have someone inside," Naomi said, joining them. "That's the only way they could have found us so quickly." Thane's expression darkened. "I know. I think I know who it is, too. Robert Hayes, he joined us 6 months ago, supposedly after defecting from HydroCorp. He missed the evacuation. Intentionally, I'm guessing," Sophia said. "We need to assume they know everything he had access to," Thane said. "The good news is, he wasn't cleared for your latest breakthroughs, Sophia. The bacterial enhancement of the catalyst, that's still our ace in the hole." The backup facility, when they reached it, proved to be even more impressive than the first. Built into an abandoned military bunker, it had been extensively modernized with state-of-the-art equipment. "We'll be safer here," Thane said as they unloaded their supplies. "This location is officially listed as a toxic waste storage site. Nobody comes within miles of it." As the team set up their equipment, Sophia noticed something different about this facility. "The air, it's even more humid here." Thane smiled, the first real smile she'd seen since the evacuation began. "This is where we've been running our larger-scale tests. Come with me." He led her through a massive set of doors into what looked like an indoor forest. The ceiling, hundreds of feet high, was covered in a network of pipes and sprayers. As they watched, a fine mist began to fall, creating real rain. "Early prototype," he explained. "Using an older version of the catalyst. With your bacterial enhancement, we could make systems like this 10 times more efficient." Sophia watched the artificial rain in wonder, feeling the cool drops on her skin. It had been so long since she'd experienced real rain. Without thinking, she turned to Thane and hugged him tightly. He stiffened in surprise for a moment, then his arms came around her, holding her close. They stood like that for a long moment, the artificial rain falling around them, their hearts beating in sync. When they finally pulled apart, their eyes met with new understanding. But before either could speak, Naomi's voice came over the intercom. "You both need to see this," she said urgently. "They're moving up the timeline for Genesis. It starts in 3 days." The moment broken, they rushed back to the main laboratory. But something had changed between them, adding a new dimension to their shared mission. Now they weren't just fighting to save humanity, they were fighting for a future where they might have a chance to explore these growing feelings. As they rejoined the others to plan their next move, Sophia caught Thane watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Whatever happened next, she knew their lives had become irrevocably intertwined, just like the catalyst in her bacteria, creating something new and powerful together. 3 days wasn't enough time. They all knew it, but nobody said it out loud as they worked around the clock to prepare their countermeasure to Genesis. Sophia's enhanced bacterial strain was performing beyond expectations, but scaling up production to the levels they needed seemed impossible. "The first water shutoffs will start in Denver," Naomi reported during their emergency strategy session. "Then spread outward to the smaller communities. They're calling it a temporary maintenance shutdown to prevent panic." Thane slammed his fist on the table. "They're going to trap people in the cities. Once the water's off, nobody will have enough supplies to make it out." Sophia studied the distribution maps they'd gathered from their remaining infiltrators in HydroCorp. "We don't need to stop Genesis completely," she said slowly. "We just need to prove our system works, publicly and undeniably." "What are you thinking?" Thane asked, moving closer to examine the maps with her. Look here, she pointed to a location just outside Denver. The Riverside Treatment Plant. It's one of their main distribution hubs, but it's also the least fortified. If we can take control of it, install our system, and demonstrate it working, the public would see that there's an alternative, Naomi finished, catching on. It would destroy HydroCorp's narrative about water scarcity being unavoidable. It's risky, Thane said, but Sophia could see the consideration in his eyes. We'd need a team to secure the facility, another to install the equipment, and we'd have to hold it long enough for the system to show results. My bacterial cultures are ready, Sophia said. In the smaller-scale environment of a single treatment plant, we could have visible results within hours. They spent the next day planning the operation in detail. Thane's security teams would move first, disguised as HydroCorp maintenance crews. Once they secured the facility, Sophia and her scientific team would follow with the equipment. The night before the operation, Sophia couldn't sleep. She found herself in the artificial rain chamber, watching the water fall in the dim emergency lighting. She heard footsteps behind her and knew it was Thane before he spoke. "You should be resting," he said softly, coming to stand beside her. "So should you," she replied, turning to face him. In the gentle rain, his features seemed softer, more vulnerable. "Are you worried about tomorrow?" "Terrified," he admitted with a slight smile. "But not about the operation. I'm worried about you being there. If anything happened to you." "I have to be there," she said. "Nobody else knows the bacterial enhancement process well enough to implement it quickly." "I know." He reached out, brushing a drop of water from her cheek. The touch lingered, sending warmth through her despite the cool rain. "Sophia, if we survive tomorrow." She stepped closer, her heart pounding. "When we survive tomorrow." Their first kiss tasted of rain and hope and possibility. It was gentle at first, then deepened with all the intensity of their shared mission and growing feelings. When they finally parted, they stayed close, foreheads touching. "We should try to sleep," Thane whispered, though he made no move to step away. "We should," Sophia agreed, equally reluctant to break the moment. But reality couldn't be held at bay forever. The next morning came too quickly, bringing with it the weight of their mission. The drive to the treatment plant was tense with anticipation. The first phase went perfectly, almost too perfectly. Thane's teams secured the facility with minimal resistance, and Sophia's team began installing their equipment. But as they worked to integrate their system with the plant's infrastructure, Sophia noticed something wrong with the readings. "These chemical levels aren't right," she muttered, double-checking her data. Her eyes widened as realization hit. "Stop. Everyone out now." The explosion ripped through the main treatment chamber seconds after they evacuated. Alarms blared as toxic smoke filled the air. "They knew we were coming," Thane shouted over the noise, pulling Sophia behind cover as gunfire erupted from multiple directions. "They poisoned the whole system." Sophia's mind raced. The explosion had destroyed most of their equipment, along with their supply of catalyst. But her bacterial samples, she patted her hazard suit's pocket where she kept a backup culture, sealed in a protective case. "We can still do this," she said. "The bacterial culture can clean the toxins, that's one of its properties we discovered in testing. We just need to reach the secondary treatment reservoir." Thane looked at her as if she was crazy. "It's on the other side of the facility. We need to retreat, regroup. In 3 hours, they'll shut off water to half of Denver," she cut him off. "We won't get another chance." Their eyes met in silent communication, months of partnership and growing trust culminating in this moment. Finally, Thane nodded. "Naomi," he called over their secure channel, "we need covering fire on the east corridor. And get me a hazmat suit." What followed was a desperate race through the facility, with HydroCorp forces closing in from all sides. They lost contact with part of their team in the chaos. Sophia tried not to think about what that meant as they fought their way toward the secondary reservoir. They reached the control room for the reservoir to find it already occupied by Robert Hayes, the traitor from their original facility. He held a detonator in one hand, his other hand steady on a pistol aimed at them. "You don't know when to give up, do you?" he sneered. "Did you really think HydroCorp wouldn't have a backup plan? This whole facility is rigged to collapse. One press, and it all goes down, along with your precious proof of concept." "Along with you," Thane said calmly, his own weapon trained on Hayes. "Small price to pay to maintain order," Hayes replied. "You of all people should understand, Thane. You've seen what happens when the masses panic over water. This is necessary." "No," Sophia stepped forward, despite Thane's attempt to pull her back. "This is greed disguised as necessity. You're murdering millions to protect profits." She saw Hayes's finger tighten on the detonator and closed her eyes. But the explosion she expected never came. Instead, she heard a sharp crack and opened her eyes to see Hayes crumpled on the floor, a dart in his neck. Behind him stood Naomi, holding a tranquilizer gun. "Sorry I'm late," she said. "Traffic was hell." There was no time for celebration. They could hear more HydroCorp forces approaching. Working quickly, they initiated the secondary reservoir's treatment sequence, adding Sophia's bacterial culture and the last of their catalyst to the system. "How long?" Thane asked as they barricaded the control room doors. Sophia watched the monitoring systems with intense focus. 20 minutes to know if it works. Another 10 for visible results. "We've got company." Naomi called from her position by the door. "Lots of company." What followed was the longest 30 minutes of Sophia's life, watching bacterial levels rise in the water supply while listening to the increasingly violent attempts to breach their position. But as the minutes ticked by, something remarkable began to happen. The water in the reservoir began to clear, then seemed to glow with the same iridescence as their original catalyst. But this was different, stronger, more stable. The bacterial enhancement wasn't just working, it was exceeding all their projections. "Look at these readings," Sophia breathed. "The bacteria are actually replicating the catalyst effect. They're turning the whole reservoir into a self-sustaining system." A massive bang on the doors made them all jump. The barricades wouldn't hold much longer. "Sophia," Thane said urgently, "is it enough? Can they see it's working?" She checked the external feeds. The treated water was already flowing into the main distribution system, its distinctive glow impossible to miss. And thanks to their earlier hack of the facility's monitoring systems, the data was being broadcast to every major news outlet in the country. "They can't hide this," she said, allowing herself to smile. "It's working. It's really working." The doors burst open. The doors burst open to reveal not HydroCorp's security forces, but a team of federal agents led by a stern-faced woman holding up a badge. "Director Amanda Pierce, National Security Agency," she announced. "Everyone step away from the controls. Now." Thane moved protectively in front of Sophia, but she grabbed his arm. "Wait," she said, pointing to the monitoring screens. "Look." Every screen in the control room was lighting up with incoming data. News feeds showed crowds gathering outside the treatment plant, their phones recording the ghostly blue glow of the treated water flowing from public fountains. Social media was exploding with images and videos. "You're too late," Sophia told the director. "The proof is already out there. Everyone can see that water scarcity isn't inevitable." Director Pierce's expression remained neutral as she studied the monitoring systems. "Actually, Dr. Reeves, we're right on time." She turned to her team. "Secure the facility. And get me a direct line to the president." "What's going on?" Naomi demanded. "We've been watching HydroCorp for months," Pierce explained. building a case against them for conspiracy and crimes against humanity. But we needed proof of a viable alternative before we could move against them. You just gave us that proof. You knew about Genesis? Thane asked, his voice dangerous. We discovered it 3 weeks ago. That's when we realized we had to accelerate our timeline. Pierce's stern expression softened slightly. We couldn't risk tipping our hand by warning you directly, but we did what we could to protect your operation. Why do you think your backup facility was never discovered? Or why the security at this plant was so light? Sophia's mind raced, putting pieces together. The government never intended to implement Genesis. No, Pierce confirmed. But we needed Hydrocorp to believe we would. Their rush to stop you from preventing Genesis gave us everything we needed to take them down. She nodded to one of her agents, who handed her a tablet. Right now, federal agents are arresting Hydrocorp executives across the country. Their assets are being frozen, and their facilities are being seized. The room erupted in a flurry of activity as federal technical teams began coordinating with Sophia's scientists to stabilize and monitor the water treatment process. In the midst of the chaos, Sophia felt Thane's hand find hers, squeezing gently. What happens now? She asked Pierce. Now? Now we need your help to implement this technology nationwide. Your bacterial enhancement of the catalyst, it's revolutionary. Early data suggests it could solve water scarcity issues not just here, but globally. We'll need a larger team, Sophia said, already thinking of the challenges ahead. And complete transparency. No more secrets. Agreed. Pierce handed her a folder. This is a preliminary offer from the new National Water Restoration Project. Full funding, complete autonomy, and oversight authority to prevent any private entity from monopolizing the technology again. We want you to lead it, Dr. Reeves. Sophia opened the folder, then looked at Thane. We'll need a security director, she said meaningfully. Someone who understands the importance of protecting this technology while ensuring it reaches everyone who needs it. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. I might know someone qualified for that position. And a chief research officer, Naomi added, examining the project specifications over Sophia's shoulder. The bacterial enhancement process will need continuous refinement for different environmental conditions. 3 months later, Sophia stood on the observation deck of the newly established Global Water Research Center, watching clouds gather over Denver. Real clouds, formed by the interaction of their enhanced water treatment systems with the natural atmosphere. The first raindrops began to fall, clean, natural rain, encouraged but not artificially created by their technology. Below, people emerged from buildings, faces turned upward in wonder. For many of the younger ones, it was their first experience of real rainfall. She felt Thane's arms slip around her waist from behind, and she leaned back against him. Hard to believe how much has changed, she said softly. Having second thoughts about taking on this responsibility, he asked, his breath warm against her ear. Sophia turned in his arms to face him. No. But I am thinking about what you said that night in the rain chamber, about, if we survive. She smiled. We did survive. We did more than survive, he corrected, pulling her closer. We changed the world. Their kiss was interrupted by Naomi clearing her throat from the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, but the UN representatives are here for the technology sharing briefing. And Dr. Reeves, your sister just arrived with the latest field test results from the Rural Implementation Program. Sophia brushed a rain-dampened strand of hair from Thane's face. Ready to help me change the world some more? Always, he replied, taking her hand as they walked back inside. Behind them, the rain continued to fall on a city coming back to life, washing away the dust of the long drought. In treatment plants across the country, glowing blue water flowed through systems enhanced by Sophia's bacteria, each facility a beacon of hope for a future where water would never again be a source of conflict, but a reminder of humanity's capacity to solve even its most daunting challenges. And in a small vial on Sophia's desk, the original catalyst sample that had brought them together sat beside a ring Thane had given her that morning, both catching the light and shimmering with possibilities, proof that sometimes the smallest things could lead to the biggest changes, in science and in love. The world was changing, drop by precious drop, and they would face whatever challenges came next together, their bond as unbreakable as the molecular structures they had transformed, their love as renewable as the water cycles they had restored to a thirsty world.